Welcome everyone to Swinburne's Alumni Impact Interviews. I'm Louise McCarthy, Director of Alumni and Operations, and I'm so pleased you could join us for today's session. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, the traditional custodians of the land where Swinburne's Hawthorn campus is located in Melbourne. I'd also like to acknowledge the Bunurong people, the traditional owners of the land where I'm located. I pay my respects to all elders, past, present and emerging, and hope that the path towards reconciliation will continue to be shared and embraced. If you've been following our Alumni Impact Interviews, you'll know that we're showcasing Swinburne alumni who are pivoting through this challenging year that we're all having. And who better to help us moderate these interviews than another Swinburne alum, Andrew Ford. Andrew started his career straight out of high school into his grandparents' company as a jack of all trades. Now, after a decade of leading digital marketing strategies for some of the world's largest companies, Andrew's turned his attention to discovering how people could use social media and digital technologies to lead more fulfilling lives. Having founded Social Star in 2009, Andrew now helps amplify businesses, leaders and entrepreneurs through personal branding using those same strategies. Andrew has completed several business degrees, including a Master of Entrepreneurship at Swinburne, where he now also shares his knowledge as a digital marketing, professional development and brand management lecturer. In today's session, Andrew will interview Swinburne alum John de la Motte, the CEO and co-founder of Compass Education. John de la Motte, together with his co-founder Lucas Filer, founded Compass Education in 2009. Since then, the company has grown to empower more than 1,800 schools across Australia and the world, providing the technology they need to reduce time-consuming repetitive tasks. From student information management and role marking to parent communication and cashless school canteens, every aspect of a school's operation can be connected in Compass. Through COVID-19, Compass has worked closely with its schools to help them gear up to work remotely, including the implementation of several modules to assist with remote learning and help improve communication between schools and parents. Before founding Compass, John was a resourcing consultant at AXA, now owned by AMP. He holds a Bachelor of IT from Swinburne, for which he was awarded a full scholarship, and he has since completed a Bachelor of Law at Victoria University. Over to you, Andrew.
Welcome, John. Great to meet you. Now, this year's been pretty challenging for everybody, and what I'd like to know is how's 2020 been like for you so far?
Look, it's been all right. I was fortunate enough to kick off the year with a bit of international travel, not kind of knowing what was ahead of me. So flew over to London for a couple of weeks for an education conference there, and then across to San Diego, where I actually just arrived in time to kind of come home.
Oh, that's pretty fortuitous. How long were you away for?
All up, probably about 4 or 5 weeks.
Lovely.
Back in the office then for a week, and we made a decision then to close. So, yeah, it's been interesting. But other than that, the year's been as good as it can be. I think a lot of Zoom meetings. The weekends have been made up with a bit of gardening and similar, but kind of ready to get back to something that's a bit more consistent and involves a higher level of interaction with the team.
Yeah, I know everyone's got a bit of Zoom fatigue. It seems to be a common thing that people are going through. So, I appreciate you being on the line today. I'm sure it'll help our alumni when they see it. So, I'd like to ask you. So, people know that you're a CEO and that you run a successful business, but I wanted to find out just a bit more about the Compass business and the model and how you got there. So, could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, started the business in 2010. So for those that don't know what Compass is a software as a service platform predominantly used in a good percentage of schools across Australia and also in Europe. And what it includes is up to about 35 modules that schools can elect to use, anything from marking the roll, attendance management, student wellbeing tracking, student academic reporting, through to purchase orders, budgeting, student enrolment management, student charges, student administration. So for us, it's a software as a service platform where schools have the ability to elect the parts that work for them. And then the users for us are typically staff at a school, as well as the students and parents too. So over the last 10 years, we've gone through a pretty substantial amount of change. We had 3 schools in 2010 that agreed to start off and try the product with us, and we're at just under 2,000 now this year.
Whoa, That's tremendous growth.
Yeah, so it's been interesting, and with that, you have a big change in staff. There was the two of us initially that started the business together. We added one staff member, I think, in late 2010, and we'd be just over 150 staff now across offices in Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, Perth, and Dublin.
Dublin. Oh, actually, we're going to talk about that a bit later, so hold that. But so I mean, that's a tremendous growth. So congratulations, first of all. Now, looking at your profile, I mean, I did notice that you did the Bachelor of Information Technology at Swinburne. I think in 2005 was the right dates. So why did you take that course, and why Swinburne in particular?
I think for me it was close. I grew up in Balwyn, so not too far away. I went to Balwyn High. How I fell into that course, it was interesting. I was really interested in music. I got into Balwyn High School on a music scholarship. I was out of zone. And
wow.
So,
what were you playing? Just you have to tell.
So I got in on singing. So
wow. So you're going to sing a song at the end of the show. Fantastic.
No, things changed since high school. I won't go into that, but a voice changes from what it was in year 7. So I went into that, did drama, really involved in kind of school musicals. And then it would have been about year 11. I was chatting to a friend of a friend, and he enrolled in the Bachelor of IT and was raving about it. And I think, it seemed like an interesting way to go. And I've kind of changed my electives in year 12 to make sure I covered the math prerequisites. Sorry. And haven't kind of looked back. It's been
wow. That's a great story. And were you into IT originally, or was that you just thought it was a good course and something to do?
I've always been fascinated by the technology side of things. And so I wasn't in the laptop class at school or anything like that. It was probably something that I was always just interested as to how it operated. And that's everything from the hardware side through to hardware electronics side through to the actual software engineering piece. I didn't really get into software engineering until the degree at Swinburne. So that was where I kind of learnt it across obviously the subjects there, but the 2 industry placements that I did as well.
So when you graduated, you actually got some industry placements through Swinburne, was that correct?
Actually, as part of the course, we got 2 6-month placements during it. And so I think it was year 2, I went and did 6 months at a help desk, and kind of realised that but it was good. It was in the kind of the health space, got to see how a software product could operate, or in this case, how you wouldn't build a software product. And then in the kind of the second placement, I actually went across to Philip Morris and learned a lot about programming. So that was fascinating.
Yeah. And so then when you finished that, what was like the first job after that, like the first job you sort of got for yourself?
Yeah, so my career pathway was kind of, I worked at a video store during high school, and that was kind of the
passage.
Yeah, the nice part now is our old office used to look over the top of that one, so the video store doesn't exist anymore, and that wasn't a sad point for me. So then I actually started working at my previous high school while I was doing my degree. And then at the end of the degree, obviously I did those 2 6-month placements during it. At the end of the degree, I went across and took a job with AXA, which is now AMP. And that was just ahead of the GFC. So I went into a resource consulting role there, which was in the IT space, which was interesting.
Yeah, great. And look, we all know that people have twists and turns over their career and so forth. So, where did you sort of, what were the highs and lows of going from that to where you are now? Or did you start the business straight away after that?
So I did 2 years at AXA, and that's where I actually met Lucas, who was the other founder of the business. And we decided that there was an opportunity in the education space, in particular the kind of the K-12 space, and we wanted to try and build a software product. I think at the time we had the conversation, we were probably we thought it would be a bit easier than perhaps it was, and so we kicked it off would have been late 2009, and that was the interesting part of this whole journey. That was we actually got an office. I think we moved into Lucas's parents' lounge room, so we took that over, and we were there for a number of months. And we progressed. Then I think they'd had enough of us being at their house, his parents. So we progressed to using a space at a local community centre and we were doing all kinds of extreme hours there. We actually had a rollout bed that we'd pull out and have like a 3 or 4 hour nap on, and then you'd wake the other person, and that was all to the one kind of album of Owl City. So it was this just on repeat. I don't know why we never changed the song, but that's you hear that song and it makes me kind of want to program. So that was kind of the start of the journey. And then I guess 10 years on, what does it involve now in terms of the career? It's changed a lot. It's now business development focused, it's finance focused, it's compliance, it's growth, it's kind of managing the personnel, And I think too, for us, it's been a big change in the last couple of years as we've brought on a private equity partner too. So they've come in with a minority stake. And so there's a lot that sits around shareholder management now, but also how do we kind of build out the business and build out a strong executive.
Yeah. It's a big journey, 10 years of entrepreneurship. And I think that people need to be a little bit naive to start, because if you knew how hard it was, you probably wouldn't, begin. So it's probably good to do it when you were young.
and we were fortunate, right? We had, we were living at home. You didn't really have expenses. I remember like the meal for the first year was tomato soup and Baker's Delight kind of bread. And then at about 3 a.m. you'd get hungry when you're kind of working away programming. You'd do a run down to McDonald's or something like that. So I think it's changed a lot since then. I get to bed at by, 10 o'clock now at night, which is nice. But
so sensible.
it was good. It was certainly lets you understand everything that you do in the business when you're doing the sales side, the support side, and writing the code. But unfortunately, I don't write the code now. We have people who are much better at that than me.
Yeah. So you did tell me a bit of an adventurous story about a McDonald's run as you were in the early days. Do you mind sharing that?
Sure. So we do the kind of the 3 a.m. kind of run down to McDonald's, and you get your cheeseburger or whatever it was. And one night we'd take it in turns as to who went, and Lucas ran down to the shop, and it was about 3 minutes from the office. So you'd be back in 10 minutes with some food. And about an hour and a half passed, and kind of I was probably in this mood where I was just writing code. I didn't really realize he hadn't got back yet. He comes in all looking quite disheveled. I'm like, what happened? And he got followed into the car park where we're working by the police. And they didn't buy his story that he was writing kind of software at 3 a.m. in the morning at this community centre. So they took his car apart and searched it for anything they could find, and then kind of left him there with it all kind of on the ground for him to pack up. So I came back with my 50-cent cone quite melted. But it was interesting, and so that was certainly a story.
Well, in Melbourne wasn't the Silicon Valley of the world at that time, so it was probably unusual with people with the red eyes, coding away rather than doing something.
I think so. I think there was definitely suspicions that he was running some other kind of racket. It definitely wasn't a coder.
Yeah, exactly. So we know that through those twists and turns of your career and building the business, it's there's ups and downs. So could you sort of tell me some of the challenging parts of building the business?
Yeah, I think every business comes with challenges. Our business is broken into kind of a number of segments. We get majority of our revenue would come from software as a service, so that recurring license revenue. We then have a merchant facility. That's where we facilitate payments to schools, typically from parents, students, or staff. And then if I'm kind of looking back on things that have been interesting in the business, we also went into the school photography space. So the model that we operate with Compass is we want to operate quite a vertically integrated business. We don't step outside of the K-12 space. In education, we don't go and kind of dabble in health or anything like that. But we look at where we have an opportunity to work with schools or improve the interaction that schools might have with their community, whether that's parents or students or their staff. And so we actually went in 2011 into the school photography space, and we said, well, it's kind of a perfect mix for us. It's a space where we think we can bring a level of improvement through technology, and being kind of a technology company at the core, we said, well, we can write the software that does this. And so we blended the two together. And if I was to look at something that's been kind of challenging or interesting along that journey, was we actually went down the path of writing our own school photography software, meaning we'd send staff out on the day, they'd take photos. And in 2011, with one of our first schools, we made this brilliant software. We tested it for a number of weeks, and the day before we were kind of going to go out and take these photos, we made a number of changes. And it was interesting. We made a change the night before, which meant that it didn't record the details of who the photo was taken of. And so we ended up kind of coming back to the office, feeling quite accomplished. We took all the photos, our first go at it, did a really good job. It looks great. Only to realize we had a few thousand photos where we didn't know who the student was. And so I'd say that was definitely one of the more challenging and probably stressful points. It's kind of, you have different paths or different milestones along your career or the building of a business, whereby things can go right, but things can also go wrong. And I remember just that sick feeling of, we've got all these photos, we're going to have to go to the school the next day and tell them that we've lost all this, and this is the end of our kind of aspiring photo business. And that obviously evolved, and we grew the photo business to be quite substantial. But yeah, I'd say there's a number of things like that kind of pop up as challenges along the way.
Yeah. So who made the change? Did you ever identify with? Because it wasn't on purpose, I'm sure.
No, it wasn't on purpose. There were three of us, and so I think we all take responsibility for the fact that we were working at an hour we shouldn't have been prior to us going to the school the next day. But it actually turned out all right. I think it's one of those moments where you have to kind of think on your feet, and we ended up going to the school, putting A3 photos around the school, and probably drawing on people's vanity by promoting it as a service whereby you could pick your preferred photo so long as you wrote your name underneath it. So coupling that with a lot of Facebook searches to try and find out who in fact kids were. It turned out for that school we only got one kid wrong, and in a normal school kind of photo setup you'd usually get 3 or 4 kids that are tagged wrong, and the teachers correct that the next day. So it all worked out all right. And I think it really just speaks to making sure you've got this focus on the future or the present rather than the past, and how do you move past that and kind of take on the next thing.
Yeah, it just shows the attitude and the resilience, I think, of the leaders that are successful, because many people could give up at that point and go back and say, look, we messed up, can we reshoot people? But that would be bad for you, it's bad for the school, they look bad. And so it's amazing that you came up with this solution that actually looks like a win for everybody. So yeah, that's remarkable.
I think a lot of it really just comes down to, you've just got to kind of not dwell on those negatives, right? They sit there and they're kind of almost a notch in the belt that you've gone through them and you've worked out kind of what the next thing is that you can tackle. But for us, I mean, there's been lots of things, right? You have personnel or HR challenges that you get presented with. We operate in a space where privacy is front and center, and so making sure we have probably the highest level of data security, privacy protection in place. Obviously making sure that our community, whether that's parents, students or staff or the departments that we work with as well, are aware of how we manage the data and personal information that we have on people, making sure that people know that we don't sell that and that we store it onshore. I think those all kind of are requirements that present challenges kind of along the journey.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is overcoming all these challenges one by one and doing them better than somebody else, I guess. And which leads me to thinking about sort of 2020 and what's been happening with COVID. And, how has that attitude of finding these answers to problems helped you with your business? Like, what have been the highlights or the opportunities you've found during this sort of last year?
I think front and foremost, we're fortunate. We're in an industry whereby we deliver content online. And so COVID has, in particular in the education space, necessitated that people have a solution in place or a platform in place whereby they can actually deliver content or do assessments or mark a role remotely. And so for us, it's really kind of reinforced the support that our platform provides to schools, which I think has been good. I think it's forced our hand a bit in terms of leadership. My background is obviously IT and law, and I don't think they're professions or possibly they might not attract personalities that are people that want to communicate quite regularly. And so for me, this has really necessitated that we do have a strong kind of communication plan and framework within the business, and making sure that we're comfortable, we have a strong leadership team in place. And I think what's been really fortunate for us is there's a high level of trust that sits across our leadership team and across our business more broadly. And so when we were forced to move towards a flexible and remote operation in terms of how staff would kind of do their job, I think for us, COVID has has allowed us to take that step, or probably accelerated our ability to take that step. And we're fortunate we had a good team in place to be able to execute on it. But I'd say for us, what's it changed? It's probably impacted our ability a bit to do product pitches or new business as much as we'd like. We've obviously seen a bit of a hit in terms of revenue through the payment provider space. People aren't going on camps or excursions anymore, but we expect that'll bounce back as soon as restrictions kind of come to an ease. So I think for us, it hasn't been the end of the world. I think there is a big downside. I think people love the human interaction. The timing of COVID has meant that we've changed pretty dramatically how we've fitted out our new offices that we've moved to. We've gone towards a real collaborative kind of hub space. This idea that you come into the office, you can work in teams, you can have a breakout space and you can problem solve. But there's no way that we'll go back to a 9 to 5, 5 days a week kind of operating model for our teams. I think we'll come out of this where we have flexible kind of work opportunities of 2 or 3 days a week from home. But interestingly, it's kind of changed. If you'd asked our team 12 months ago what they want, they would have said, I want to be able to work from home. I think if you asked our team today what they want to do, everyone just wants to come back to the office.
That's interesting.
I'm in the same boat. I think my partner, she'd love to see me in the office more and kind of less time at home. So we're excited to welcome people back to a new space, which is designed very much around that how do we collaborate and work together.
Yeah, it's interesting you actually moved during COVID. That's an interesting choice. I mean, most people would be downsizing and not putting on, not moving buildings at this time, maybe not having a building. So what sort of led to that decision?
I think we made a choice that as a result of COVID, we have some really strong supporting shareholders and a really supportive board. And we saw this as an opportunity to really ramp up our operations. While there's a bit of a revenue hit as a result of payments, we see that the future for this is really good. And we see that this is an opportunity for us to really drill down and grow it. I think an interesting part would be too, we didn't like the location we were in. We had challenges there with the building and how it kind of operated for us. And so we've gone to a larger space, which is that collaborative one. And timing probably played well to that the lease came to an end during COVID anyway. So it meant that we could do probably a more phased move than we would otherwise need to, where you'd have to do it all within a week without imposing too much of an impact on your teams. The fact that we've had a few months to nut it out has probably worked really well.
Which is, again, taking on the opportunity of the time rather than the threats of the time, which comes back to attitude. And you mentioned something about overseas, and at the start you mentioned you got an office in Dublin. So that's a big change. Tell me more about that. Yeah,
I think for us, if you look across the market, in the next 3 to 4 years, we see that the TAM here, or the total market that's kind of a possibility for us in Australia, will start to decrease, or we'll cover up more of it. We'll have more penetration across the existing market here. So we're looking at the international markets. Ireland was a really nice choice for us. We won a contract with Catholic schools up the East Coast. And so if you're familiar with Ireland, it's got a lot of Catholic schools, and that probably worked to our benefit in going across there. But the nice part there was it gave us a smaller market for us to really dip our toe in the water and see, can we accommodate differences in time zone? Can we accommodate differences in languages? Obviously, they've got Gaelic there. Can we accommodate differences in currency and how we process payments? And so accommodating the euro piece. And so it was really our dipping our toe in the water so that we can go across to the more broader UK and US space as well. But it's worked really well. A great team over there. I was fortunate enough to visit those guys in January when I popped across as well. So it's worked well. It's also meant that we could exploit a almost 24-hour coverage on our support for schools. So during COVID, we've seen in particular that schools don't operate from kind of 9 till 4 p.m. They might be doing a changed timetable at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And what we've been able to do here, while we've had fantastic uptake with the schools in Ireland that have obviously taken up the product, we've also had the ability to leverage those extended hours of support both ways. If a school in Ireland wants to call outside of hours, it gets routed across to our Australian team. If a school in Australia wants to call outside of hours, they can get routed across to the team in Dublin.
Wow, that's amazing. So during that pivot, you've actually had, several things fall into place that has actually been a a great benefit to the business, it seems. Was that planned? I mean, that sort of 24/7 support, or was it just something you went, wow, there's another opportunity for us?
I think when the idea of Dublin came up, it wasn't kind of front and centre, but when we went through and assessed it, it certainly came up as a real positive and a market that we saw there was good potential for us to test that capability. And so we'd be just over a year or so into that market now, and it's growing at a rate similar to what we're seeing in the domestic market here. So a really, really strong commitment to building that out.
Wow, that's fantastic. It sounds like you're growing really fast. So you're employing in Australia as well? Is that on the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly any Swinburne graduates, we would encourage them to come forward. We have a very high dominance of Bachelor of Info Tech Swinburne alumni that now work for us, which has been fantastic. But we would have probably another 15 to 20 roles that we would look to fill before the end of the year. So
Wow.
really ramp it up at the moment, but number of projects and some really good dynamics. It's interesting. You join us at the moment, it's a bit different. We'd normally have a really nice onboarding piece where we'd meet you face to face and we'd go out for lunch. So that's been changed a bit for probably the last 10 or so staff that have joined us over the past 6 months. But still certainly an area that we're trying to really build out. But yeah, I'd certainly take this as a bit of an opportunity to say anyone that's interested, we'd love applications to come in.
Oh, I'm sure. And we'll, would they go to your website for that?
Go to our website or feel free to email us or LinkedIn, anything. Pretty accessible.
Well, I know you're successful when you have your own merchandise, and I see that there's a fantastic logo on your T-shirt. Does every new recruit get one of them?
I believe they do, yes. So we have this new kind of look. It's a modern compass, I'm told. I thought it looked a bit like an alarm clock, but I was overruled that this is the modern logo that we want to go with. So that's now branded pretty much everywhere through the office and signs and everything like that. So our team have done a really good job of getting that brand piece out there. And I believe that the team that were leading that were also 2 Swinburne graduates as well. So.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I love to hear that. And so what's next? World domination, it sounds like it?
I don't know. I think we'll take each step as it comes. I think we'll welcome back the opportunity to come back and work in kind of a more hub or interactive kind of face-to-face environment. That'll be good. We'll go for probably strong international focus and growth over the next 12 months, where we see those opportunities in probably the UK and the US. And for us, it'll be, I guess, kind of taking that step as you transition from a startup to a scale up and come with that. It's a bit different now when you have tiers of management that sit there. And so it's still probably a big learning journey, right? I have no doubt that we'll make a number of mistakes over the next few months, but I'm confident we have a good team in place to be able to really drive it forward.
Well, and the right attitude, I think, is so important, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So look, it's an amazing story. I congratulate you on success. And so there's one final question I have. So imagine that, you're sitting in front of an old Swinburne alumni group, and after hearing this interview and you've just got one piece of advice that you could give to them about how to thrive during COVID and how to react to this change. So what would that one piece of advice be?
It's a good question. I don't know if it's so much COVID related. I think maybe I could break it into, say, 2 parts. I think that there has to be a level of determination. You have to know what you want, and to be honest, you have to acknowledge that it may often take longer than you expect it would. If I'm completely honest, I thought we'd be at the stage we're at with Compass probably 4 or 5 years ago. And Lucas is probably more the realist in our founder kind of relationship. But I'm delighted as to where we are. But I think determination probably is one of those key pieces. Grab what you want and really focus on keeping it. I think the second part there is probably to make sure that you don't get bogged down by the negative or the bad experiences. You're going to have people that aren't happy working for you. You might have bad interactions that happen. You might have a bad sales day. You might have someone that gives you a hard time about something. I think, or you might make a genuine mistake. And I think moving past that is probably one of the key pieces. So I think I was reading a really good book by a guy called Hugh Van Cuylenberg called The Resilience Project. And I don't know if this applies just to business, but probably more in life as well. And it's very much kind of take the time each day to recognize what you've got. And that can be as simple as you've got somewhere to go home to, you're getting good food on the table, you've got good friends that are kind of sticking with you. I think this book kind of really summed it up pretty well for me, which is it's have that piece of understanding and being very grateful for what you've got. And an interesting part that me and my partner have kind of changed a bit. We ended up chatting to the author of the book, and he said just basic things you can do around how you phrase it, right? Trying to put things in a positive and looking on the good that you've got. And it's as simple as now when we catch up and I might get home late from work, and I'd usually get the question from Robin, my partner, on kind of how was your day? And I think by default, with even a question like that, you kind of drop into the negatives or the challenges. And it's just, we've made a conscious effort to rephrase it. And it's like, tell me some good things that have happened in your day today. And I think underneath all of this is, so long as you've got this positive mindset and you can recognize the good that's happening, it's all too easy to fall into the trap of the bad things that have happened throughout the day. So I don't know if I've kind of answered your question or just gone off on a tangent. I'd say the advice would be look at the positives and kind of, you can't change the past. So focus on the present to make the future good.
Yeah, I love it. I can see it in the way you talk, and the business that you've built is this power of gratitude and appreciation and opportunity rather than focusing on the negative. And they're powerful words. So look, John, I really appreciate your time. It's been a fantastic lesson for everybody from students starting out. You've given opportunities to people from Swinburne to work there. And I really appreciate that time. That was fascinating. So we wish you best of luck on your journeys around the UK and beyond. Hopefully it'll expand globally. And thanks to the audience for listening and joining us today. And if you have any questions or simply like to connect to John and myself, we'll be available in the Swinburne Alumni LinkedIn group. Straight after this presentation, you can go there and ask some questions and to either myself or, more importantly, John. And you can find that by going to LinkedIn, searching Swinburne University of Technology Alumni, or you could Google it and it will find it there. We also put it in the link provided in the information to the event to make it easy for you. Now, join us next week for episode 4, where we've got supporting our community. We've got an influential entrepreneur and a social innovator, Weeza Chow. She's going to speak to us about her passion for improving the equality within our communities. Really fascinating talk. And she's got this really great new venture called Resilience Against Racism, which is really topical, and it was created in response to some pretty terrible racist behaviour towards people of Asian appearance during the COVID-19. So I hope you can join us then, and I look forward to seeing you then.